ENC Question Reflection.
Welcome back, YouTubers, to another episode from E&C Question Reflection. Today we're going to be focusing on child rearing. We're going to be talking about disciplining with a purpose. A purpose. A lot of people discipline their kids, but they don't do it with a purpose. We're going to be covering 4 questions that I have been asked a couple of times to kind of go over. And so I said, well, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and put them in our video. So we're going to go ahead and cover that now. So, all right, y'all, let's go ahead and do this. So the first question that we have is, why is discipline important in a child's life? A lot of people might sit and think, well, duh, you got to discipline your kids. You're going to spoil them. You're going to ruin your kids. There's so many things that people say, well, you got to discipline. Oh, my mom told me to. Whatever it is, that's what it is. You know, you got to discipline your kids. But how? People say, well, how do you discipline your kids? I whip them. That's it. So the question to this is a little bit deeper. It's really a depth about understanding what is discipline. Is discipline spanking your kids? Is discipline yelling at your kids? Is discipline having a conversation with your kids? What is discipline? So before we can even answer this question, you have to understand what is discipline. So I'm going to go ahead and cover that. So I'm going to add that question in. What's discipline? So discipline is so much more than child rearing. It's so much more than spanking your kids. There's so much more to it. It's so much deeper. And when I say it's deeper, I'm saying it like this. Discipline is teaching control. Discipline is teaching judgment calls. Discipline is literal redirection. That's what it is. It is using a form of punishment or negative consequence, and sometimes really even a positive consequence, but it's about using a consequence to teach a redirection. So whether your child does something and you spank them, they would consider that corporal punishment because it's a physical touch. Corporal punishment nowadays seems to be a little bit more on the I'm going to abuse you side than it is on really effective side, but that's really what it is. That's what it is. When you physically spank your children, it's corporal punishment. It's causing physical pain. So the disciplining in itself is really about redirecting your child in the way that they need to go, that they need to be raised. People who are biblical will reference in Proverbs, I want to say it's 26:3, that says that if train your child in the way they should go, and when they leave from it, they'll come back. So biblically speaking, you're training your children. And discipline is really about that redirection. It's training a child. It's redirecting a child, or even an adult in some cases. But in this video, we're talking about children. It's redirecting your children on a path where they can be successful in life, that they can be able to live outside of your household in a decent manner, in a way that they can survive. It's in a survival kind of way. So with that being said, why is it important in a child's life? Because if you do not discipline your child, if you do not redirect your child will learn bad behaviors. Or they will learn to do things that are not the greatest. For instance, I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a 1-year-old and they see a stove. Curiosity, killed the cat. Let's say an electric stove, you know how it gets really bright when it's really hot. It's going to draw a child's attention. So let's say the child goes and they can do one of 2 things. They can touch it or they cannot touch it. They're going to want to touch it. It's hot. They don't know that it's hot, but it's red hot. Like the color is just bright. They're going to want to touch it because they don't know. At this point, as a child, and anybody that's born, you are born ignorant, meaning that you have no knowledge. None whatsoever. You have to be taught knowledge. And knowledge comes from things that you see, things that you hear, things that you're redirected from, things that you go through, experiences. So that's where your knowledge comes from, whether you read it, whether it's told to you, whether you see it, experience it, whatever it is, that's where your knowledge comes from. So if this child is never told, this is hot and caliente, if they've never been told that this is going to hurt, or they actually have never actually been hurt by it, then they're going to try to touch it. And then, of course, now they'll learn. Or if a parent catches them, they can, redirect them. Oh, no. And if a child sees the parents panic, a lot of times a child will be like, oh, something's going on because my mom's freaking out, or my dad's gonna go off, or So a child sometimes can learn just by the raise of the voice or the yell, the tone, and sometimes that'll work for that child. So the importance of discipline is to redirect them. If you don't teach your child that stealing is bad, if your child goes in the store and they steal something and they never get caught, they're going to keep doing it. They're going to keep doing it until they're held accountable for it. And even if sometimes kids, some kids, even though you tell them no, that they shouldn't do it, they're going to be hard-headed, and they're going to do it anyways. And then they have to learn. Hard head makes the soft butt. They're going to have to learn the hard way. And they're going to have to suffer. And if they don't get caught, they're going to keep doing it because they've never been held accountable. Now, if you have a situation where a child is doing something and they've never been told that it was wrong, or they're allowed to get away with it. Let's say, I'll give you a good example. Let's say a child talks back to his mother or his father, and that mother and father let them get away with it. You come across, stop doing that, so-and-so. I ain't got to listen. They start that stuff. Why you ain't got to listen? Or they start this, oh, well, baby, you should listen to this. And you don't raise your tone of voice, a child's going to keep doing that. That child is going to keep on. Or if your child is listening to something or listening to music that they really shouldn't be listening to, or they're watching something that they really shouldn't be watching, and you never tell them not to, they're going to keep doing it. They're going to keep doing it. They're going to do it until you tell them it's wrong. I have a theory because I started substituting and mentoring so that I could get close to children, because I was actually raised in the system, and the foster care system, and the government system. And one thing I always do is I have a reason behind everything that I say to my kids. If I tell you no, I have a reason, and I'm always going to tell you why. Do I have to tell you why? Not necessarily, but it's more effective if I do. If I tell my child, look before you cross the street, they can either do, well, why I got to look? Why I ain't, what? But if I say you got to look before you cross the street because, there could be cars coming and, you could get hit. So disciplining is about redirecting. Disciplining is about helping a child understand. Whenever you start getting into, and that's also, last video, that's how you build perception. It is understanding. You have to help them to understand why things are the way that they are. It's important that you do this to a child, because if you direct them down a specific path, even if they veer off just a little bit, and you redirect them, they're going to remember that. And you will find that, yeah, your children's going to make mistakes. Oh, no child is perfect. Trust me. They will try the little slick stuff. They will test your boundaries. They will see just how close a thin line is to you and their attitude. Oh, trust me. They will. And when they do, when you show them where that boundary is, they're going to stop crossing that boundary, because they're going to establish what is called a wholesome fear. It's a healthy fear. And it's not a fear of, oh my God, my mom and dad is going to kill me if I do this. It's more of, I'm going to disappoint my parents. I really do not want to disappoint my parents. I really want my parents to be like, let me do things. Let me have more permissions. Let me have more responsibilities because they can trust me. That kind of a healthy fear, a fear of disappointment, more or less not a fear of like intimidation. Because you don't want to make your children feel intimidated because then, yeah, they're going to listen to you because you got a switch or you got a belt or you got your hand or whatever it is that you're using for a discipline. So they're going to feel you for that. But when it comes time for emotional or mental support, they're not coming to you. They're not coming to you. They're not going to talk to you about it. You no longer are approachable because they are scared of what you're going to do to them, not what's going to come out of it. Because the consequence can be good and bad, good or bad. Okay? So discipline is important in a child's life because children want to know what to expect. Children love discipline. And when I say that, people are like, what? My kid hates to be disciplined. No, your child hates to be spanked. Your child hates to be hit with a belt or hit with a switch. Or your child hates to be grounded or whatever it is disciplining. No, your child doesn't hate discipline. Your child hates that consequence. Children love discipline because, like I said, discipline is a redirection. When you redirect your child, they know what to expect. That's why I was telling you about the boundaries. When you show a child what boundaries are there, and you make them real clear, I ain't talking about faded lines, blurred lines. I ain't talking about none of that where they can barely see. There might be a gray area. I might get away with this. No. That ain't happening. And when they know that expectation has been set. I had a principal come up to me one time and she said, I don't know how you control these kids the way you do. Because I always take a challenge and I always go for the troubled classes. I always go for the schools that have the most fights, the most attitude, the most gang violent, whatever. I always go for a challenge. And so she says, I don't know how you do it. She said, every time you come in here, I don't see how you come in here. I don't ever have to worry about them calling to the office. And she said, I never have to worry about not one student being sent to my office. Nobody fights in your class. Nobody's disrespectful to you. Nobody is arguing and fussing. And I told her one thing. I said, I'm going to tell you what it is. Because when I walk in that classroom, I set that expectation. Period. I set that boundary. And that's the same thing you have to do with your own kids, is you have to set that expectation in the beginning, which means for your children would be infancy. You have to teach them from a baby what they're going to be expecting. You can't allow them to do one thing as a baby and then not let them do that as a big kid. You can't let them suck their thumb, and then when they get older, you're like, stop sucking your thumb. Because then they're going to, I have kids that they're like, why? I mean, I've been sucking my thumb since I was a baby. Yeah, but you're going to be bucktooth. And then they're like, so if I suck my thumb, then I'm going to be like, have the teeth. I was like, yeah, and then your mom's going to have to pay for braces. So then the kids will stop sucking them. Because guess what? They have reasoning. They have a why. Now they understand why on earth they shouldn't be doing that. So you have to set that expectation from the get-go, from the jump. I have kids that come. I have people that bring their kids to me and my husband, and they'll be like, I can't handle them. I can't do it. I have been spanking my child, and it doesn't do anything. With that being said, that goes to my next question. The next topic that we're going to cover is, why is consistency important? So, let's say there's a song, and I know music and media is the great thing now. Like, okay, so if I say there's a song that comes on, and I say, no, you need to turn it off, because that's a no-no. That's got cussing, it's got this going on in it, I don't want you seeing that, this, that, whatever. And then they listen to it again, and you hear it. They think you don't hear it, but as moms and dads, we hear everything. Wait a minute. No, cut it off. You have to stay consistent. Because, and with the discipline, if I hear it again, this is going to happen. And when you hear it again, that needs to happen. Because if it doesn't, guess what's going to happen? They're going to know you're going to change. They're going to know that mom changes. She's going to switch out. If I keep pressing her, she's going to give in. She'll give in. She'll give in. Just keep pressing her. I get to listen to this music. Just keep pressing her. No, you're not going to get away with that. And that's why consistency is important. You have to keep the same routine and discipline that you do any other day of the week that works. So some people, I hear them say, they'll be like, well, my child's on a schedule. Oh, yeah? Really? What kind of schedule? And they'll go through this, well, you know, they breakfast, and this time they eat this snack, and this time they do this and that and this, that. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, what's your discipline schedule look like? Huh? The discipline schedule is not necessarily a time frame, but it means if this happens, this gonna happen. My children get to play a video game from 4 to 7. So they get free time from 4 to 7. If I let them play, you know, that's up to me and daddy, you know. But they know that they can play their games and stuff at between 4 and 7 as long as the chore that they've been assigned that week, because their chores change. The chore that they've been assigned that week is completed, that their room is cleaned up, and that their clothes that I washed are put away. So they know that they can do that. So they've earned that. We keep that consistent. Now, if they go outside of that, they will get their game taken. And the crazy thing is, I hear parents like, well, I took my son's game. Oh, yeah? When did they get it back? Oh, whenever I feel like giving it back. Bad idea. Because then you're going to switch up. One minute they're going to get their game taken for 3 days. Next minute it's going to be 24 hours. The next day it might be 5 days. However mad you are, that's how long they're going to get their game taken. But you can't make those logical decisions based on how you feel. You have to make that logical decision based on consistency. So if I say I'm going to take this game from this day to this day, you have to keep that. You have to keep that consistency going. For little children, if my husband used to tell me when our children were younger, and I would put something on a table, and I would tell them, don't touch that. And then they try to go for it again. I mean, take it, they're like 1, 2, you know, they're babies. And they try to do it again. So I would move it. My husband would say, don't move it. Leave it right there. I said, okay, put it back. And then so later on I asked him, I was like, well, why did you say that? He said, because they're going to do what we tell them to do. We're not going to adjust for them. They're going to adjust for us. And that's how you teach on a consistent level. So I'd put it back. And every time, you know, my middle son would try to grab this cup. Every time Jaden would try to grab the cup, I'd thump his little fingers. And he's like 2. Thump his little fingers. And then he'd snatch back and he'd kind of look at me and cry a little bit. And I just look at him. Because one thing we don't do in our house is hold a crying baby. Period. Nope, not going down. And eventually, it might take 3 or 4 times, but eventually, he learned he better not touch that cup. And it taught him 2 things. 1, he better not touch that cup. And 2, when mommy says no, mommy means no. Period. If mommy says no and I do it anyways, I'm finna get thumped and it's gonna be painful. Because mommy said no the first time and I didn't listen. So physical discipline should always really be the last resort. And that goes to the next question is, what is the most effective form of discipline? Every child is different. I'm going to tell you that straight up. Every single child is different. You can't say, I got 3 kids, and whip every one of them. Is it effective? That's going to be my next question. Is it effective? Is it effective? And sometimes I'm like, well, no, you know, I hit this one and it don't seem to do anything. Because you're not being effective. It's a big, difference, because you'll have 3 kids and each one of them, they learn different, They act different, their personality's different, and they care about things different. You might have a child who doesn't like to be hit, and so talking to them ain't going to do nothing because they're going to be like, and so you put that hurting on them, and then they, oh, okay, I get it. And then they've established an intimidating fear that you will do something to them. So it's almost like having consistency. But one thing, when you are going to physically pop your child, you want to help them understand why. And you don't want to do this whole number where I'm going to wait 6 hours or 2 weeks and then spank my kid. No, you want to get that right then and there so that they ain't forgot, especially with young children, because with young children, their memories tend to forget what they did. And so then they start looking at you like, well, what'd I do? When they're like 2 and 3 years old, you're like, what'd I do? Or even 4 and 5-year-olds. They're like, you could wait in 3 or 4 hours and then you pop them. They're like, what I did? Because they're looking for you to discipline them right then and there and be redirected. See, that's why I was saying, you want to catch a child by the time they're 7. If you can really train a child by the time they're 7, you'll be able to get that child on a really good path. In Imperial China, they're very orderly. They actually start disciplining their child as soon as the child can recognize a face and understand a command. So as soon as a child can, knows mommy and daddy, they start disciplining. And they discipline with bamboo sticks. Okay, so here in America, we think a switch is something crazy. Imperial China uses bamboo. Bamboo is like thick. I got some in my yard. It's thick. And that's what they use. But see, they used it for a very short time because they didn't have to use it because they were consistent with what the discipline they used, and they were consistent with how long it took for things to get done. Now, you would have some children, of course, that are rebellious and that just can't. With those children, sometimes talking is a lot. Sometimes you can get to a child verbally better than hitting them. Some kids, they be on a defense real quick, and they're ready to fight back. Even young children, and that actually happened to me. I don't substitute for the elementary schools because I feel like the information that I give, the lectures that I give at schools, the middle school understands better. They understand a lot better. With the elementary schools, I walked into a school one day, and I told another teacher, I said, you know what, take my kids to recess, and I'll take all of them ISS detention kids. Because one thing about me, I don't play the radio at all. Set expectations, and that's what it's going to be. So, like I said, all children are different. So what form of discipline is better? I can't pop children that don't belong to me, or children that aren't related to me, or, you don't do that, So I'm sitting in this classroom, and these kids are buck wild. Like, I'm just, and me, this is me. I'm sitting there watching them, and they're looking at me like, why are you not, like, losing your cool? Why are you not, like, flipping out and doing this? So I said, why? Is that what you want me to do? Do you want me to do that? And so they didn't say anything. They just looked at me. And so one of the kids stood up on the desk. He was trying to get the rest of the class to do the same thing or to feed into it. So I keep a referral in my bag. Always. I always have, but I never have had to actually fill one out. So I told him, I was like, look, y'all give me 10 seconds. So they just be quiet. And I said, let me tell you something. I set my expectation. I said, y'all can act like y'all got some sense, and y'all can go home. Y'all can go home at the end of the day with no referrals, and we can sit. Maybe we can tell stories or whatever it is that y'all really want to talk about while everybody else is out in recess. Or you can act a plumb fool, and I promise you, you're not gonna like it dealing with me in this classroom. So it's your choice, your consequence. That entire class was sitting in their chair. The other teacher that was dealing with ISS came in, and she was looking at me crazy like, how you got these kids to sit down? Now, I can tell people my secret all day long, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be able to duplicate it. It doesn't mean that. I mean, they can try, but it doesn't mean that it's going to roll off the same way because, see, I'm just meeting these kids. So I've set the expectation from the beginning. They already know these kids. And these kids are not going to just change how they feel about a teacher just because a teacher comes in like, nope, now we're fixing to do this. Nope, now we finna do this. And you gonna do. That's not going to work. I'm sorry. You done ruined your opportunity when you didn't set that expectation from the beginning. So with that specific class, I didn't have to physically touch anybody. I didn't have to threaten to physically do anything to anybody. Not that I would, but the point is, form of discipline. All children are different. You may have a child that is very calm, cool, collected, humble, sweet. They might not have to be spanked. They may have enough wholesome fear and belief in you, respect for you, that they just do what you ask them to do. They don't necessarily want to be spanked. They don't have to be spanked. They know I've been spanked one time. You'll have kids that'll be like, I got spanked once. And after that, I ain't done. They know I don't want to be. I don't want it to go this far. So you want to teach a child consistency, and this will lead to, especially when you start to discipline them from a young age, you will teach them wholesome fear. You will teach them to have a healthy fear of you. That healthy fear would be, I'm mommy, this is daddy, we're in charge, we tell you what to do, and we tell you what you should and shouldn't do, what's going to hurt you, what's not going to hurt you, what's going to benefit you, and you go from there. But you'll have those one little children that'll test your limitations, and even if you tell them, please do not cross the road without looking because you will get hit by a car, they're the ones that almost get hit by a car because they didn't look, because they were being hard-headed. My children will tell you, a hard head makes a soft butt, and they can actually tell you exactly what that means. Another rule in my house is you can't use words that you don't know the definition to, and you can't use words out of context whatsoever, so that eliminates all the cuss words. And you can't talk about things you don't understand. That's when you be quiet and you listen to someone else tell you what that means, because then you're gaining knowledge. Because like I tell my children, you can be stupid and smart in the same situation. And they laugh at me like, what? Yeah, you can be smart and stupid in the same situation because you can read any book, all the books in the world, and you can gain all the intel, all the knowledge you want. But if you do not apply that to your life, and you don't teach your children to apply that to their life, they can make some really stupid decisions. Really stupid decisions. Because there's two different types of parents. Maybe three. Well, you can say three. But there's two columns, more or less. You have providers. Parents who provide for children materially. They buy them shoes, they buy them clothes, they pay their rent, they get their hair fixed, they get their materialistic things. They buy them games, and they feed them food. Things that are material, things that can be taken away. That's all they do. But they neglect the child on the flip side. They neglect the child's intellect. They neglect the child's not teaching the child knowledge or morals. And that would be the other type of parent who raises their child. Because a parent, you don't want to be a parent that provides for your child. Because anybody can provide. The government provides for your child. If you get food stamps, and they provide for your child. If you get a welfare check, your child's, someone else is providing. So you're providing for a child, but if that's all you're doing, you're not raising your children to be anything or do anything or know anything or be wise. You're literally just giving them the things that they need, and you're only providing for them on a present situation. So you're not even thinking about their future. And some people might say, well, you know what, I I put money in the college fund for the future. You put money in a college fund for the future. One, it's still materialistic. Two, what makes you think that child is going to go to college in the future? Because it's very well that child might say, you know what, I don't want to go to college. They might get 18 and be like, I want to go to trade school. So, again, parents like that are only providing for their children. When you're raising your children, you are raising that child to have value. That goes the opposite of spoiling your child is when you diminish value. When you're raising your child, you're teaching that child value. You're teaching that child morals and standards, respect. You're teaching it true love, not just "I love you" as just a formal saying, but you teaching them what actual true love is. You're teaching them how they should live their life, how they can be decent human beings, how they can do things the right way, how they can be righteous. And righteous is not a biblical word. Righteous literally means you're doing things the right way. But that's raising your child, because sometimes I've noticed that there's some parents that may not have the greatest means to provide materially. They may have just the basic meals. They may have just a basic apartment. They raise their kids, 3 kids in an apartment. They have just a basic car. They have these basic things, but they actually spend time teaching their child value, teaching their child morals, standards, respect, the different levels of respect, because there's more than one level of respect. You don't just give everybody the same level of respect. I'm sorry if you feel that's the case, because it's not. But a parent who raises their child spends time doing that. And no, they don't put it off on someone else, because that would be providing someone else to do something. You as a parent have to teach these to your children, because your child is not going to have that level of respect that you want them to have if you put that teaching off on someone else. Some parents send their kids off to somewhere else to learn how to be men, or how to be young ladies. They send it to someone else, and I promise you that child is not going to have that level of respect that they have for the person who actually taught that to them. And that's a common issue. Very, very common issue. And then, of course, you have the parents that are doing both. The parents who actually provide for their child, and they're also teaching their children values, and they're actually raising their children. And there are parents who spend time doing that and can't provide. It's rare. It's kind of rare to see a parent who teaches a child but doesn't really provide. Most of the time you might see that in not an absent parent, but like a parent, maybe a divorcee parent, like where they're 2 separate parents, and maybe the dad doesn't provide, but he teaches the child when it's there, something like that. But it's very rare. Most of the time, if a parent is raising a child, they're providing for it too. So that's why I said 2, sometimes 3. So with that being said, the type of discipline that you use is going to be based on the child. You need to pay attention to your child, how they learn. Some children learn by just watching you. Some children learn by saying, just watching the things you say. You'll hear them repeat you. If a child can literally teach someone else what you taught them, you are doing a very good job, because that's what your point is when you're teaching them something, is that they can take it, not just hear it, but comprehend it. That's the difference between listening and hearing. Hearing something, you hear stuff all day long, and sometimes you don't even pay attention to it. But listening is when you hear it and you comprehend it. There's a huge, huge difference in the two. One time I was in class, and I teach a lot of off-the-wall stuff. I really focus on teaching kids things that they may not hear at home. Like the difference between stupidity and wisdom. Kids really think that one is smart and one is dumb, when that's not the case. That's not the case. Or they'll think that being smart and wise is the same thing. They'll think that being ignorant and stupid is the same thing, when it's definitely not. So I spent a lot of time in school teaching the difference. So I had this kid come up to me, and I tend to be a favorite to the kids. So he comes up to me, he's like, oh my gosh. So it was story time. I let the kids talk to me about, their week or whatever, what weird things do you want to talk about with me? And a lot of times it's personal issues. So this one kid said, I went home and I told my dad what you said about ignorance and stupidity. And I was like, oh yeah? And I was like, how did that go? He was like, my dad said you're stupid. I was like, so from what you know, now that we talked about it, from what you know, does that make sense? And he said, no. And he was like, and I told my dad, I was like, Dad, ignorance is the lack of knowledge. It's when you don't have the intel on something. Everybody's born ignorant. Stupidity is when you know something and you do it anyways. When you know that if I step in a hole and I'm going to hurt myself, or I'm going to misstep and I step in this hole and I hurt myself, I knew that was going to happen, but I did it anyways. Then I did something really stupid. But if I didn't know any better, then I was just ignorant, but now I know. And I was very, very impressed with him. Now, I told him, don't show any disrespect to your parents, of course, because we do want to be respectful to our parents. But what I did tell him was I commended him very highly for the fact that he was able to go home and share with his parent something that I had taught him. And he was dead on. Like, he really repeated exactly what I said. And that is my whole goal as a teacher, as a mentor, is to be able to teach something to these kids that they can repeat. And I loved it, and I was so proud of him. So here's the last question I have is rather an off-the-wall one. But I had somebody ask me about it, and I understand where they're coming from. So the question was, will corporal punishment have a negative effect later on in a child's life? So the issue with this was that corporal punishment teaches children how to react in violence. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. That's why, as parents, we have to teach 4 necessities, not 3, not 2, not 1. And the 4 necessities, sometimes there's 5 if you're a spiritual person, if you're a biblical person. But there's a physical need, there is a mental need, there's an emotional need, there's a financial need, and then there's a spiritual need. So there's the 5 needs that we need as human beings. When we teach our children the physical needs, which is touching, kissing, hugging, the love and the physical intimacy, when we teach them that, we're teaching them the physical need, that I need these things in my life. And then you have the emotional, the intellectual kind of things, and mental. Emotional is more like how to deal with anger, coping with things. Everybody has a need to care for these things. And so when you spank, that's why I said it needs to be the last resort. But when you spank a child with anything, a switch, a belt, your hand, you are teaching a child that punishment that physical punishment is a solution. What you have to do is when you're using physical discipline, you have to discipline twice. And I know you're like, well, that's what? You can't discipline twice. I don't mean discipline like that. Remember, I told you in the beginning of the video that discipline is about redirection. So you have to redirect twice. The first, when you physically had to touch them, was a redirection from whatever it is that they did that caused it to get as far as having to be physically spanked. The next redirection is going to be verbal. It's going to be, the next discipline is going to be verbal. It's going to be, let me explain to you what just happened. I told you in the beginning, I said I always have a reasoning for everything. And my kids will tell you that if I do anything, I'm going to be able to tell you why I did it. I don't just do stuff. And then you'll be like, why you did that? I don't even know. No, I don't roll like that. So the next conversation you're going to have with your child, after you have physically spanked them, whether it was with the switch, whether it was with whatever, the next conversation is, let me tell you why this happened. This happened because of this. I had to take it this far because this did not work. And I need you to understand that this is happening in life. This is going to happen. I'm preparing you for this. I have an adopted daughter that me and my husband, we adopted her when she was younger. And she grew up, and I have two grandbabies from, because she's older, of course, we adopted her. And so I have two grandchildren from her. And the youngest one, he watches us like I'm talking about like a hawk. So we call them a little TV switch. They're like this big. And he gets redirected a lot with the little TV switch because all I really got to do is show him that he hates that thing. So all I have to do is tell him, where's my switch? And he's like, let me just stand straight. If I tell him don't do something and he's just, where's my switch? He'll straighten up just with the verbal word of where's my switch. So I seen him, he picked up the switch and he was spanking my niece that came to visit because she was doing something he knew was a no-no. So I had to correct him. And no, I didn't spank him for doing it. I didn't. What I told him, I was like, no, that's not your job. That's not your responsibility. So because I corrected that behavior, now if he's over or something and one of my sons is doing something that, maybe he hit me or something, he will bring me that switch. He will find it. He will bring me a little dinky thing or something, and he'll say, Gigi, he hit me. You got to go pank him with this. And he knows that that's discipline, but he knows he can't do it. He knows he's not supposed to do it. So whenever you're spanking a child, you have to then turn around and redirect them again because they don't need to be thinking that this is the first resort. Because physical violence should never be the first thing you think of. Like, I have a lot of kids that'll be like, you know what, miss, my mama punches me in my chest. What? Now, I also came from the medical field a while back. It just wasn't for me. And she punched you in your chest? First thing I'm thinking of is, that's what they do when they're trying to bring somebody back to CPR. They hit you pretty hard. So I'm already on that thought, and it really bothers me when kids tell me that because that's their parents' first reaction, and is to physically hit a child. But there should always be that verbal, all right, hey, stop doing that. Like when I get in the car, my kids have to put a seatbelt on. Well, one of my children tends to forget every time. So I can do like this, and they know, I need to put my seatbelt on. If they don't get it, I might turn around and pop their shoulder, not hard, but then they remember. So sometimes it's needed, but the thing is, it should never be the first thing you think of whenever you're disciplining it, because yes, corporal punishment does affect the learning styles of a child. Not learning styles in the ways of, reading, writing, how I see things. Not like that. It affects the way that a child thinks. It changes their perception of discipline or problem solving. So the first idea should never be, well, pop them upside the head. Or if they say something slick to me, I'm just going to punch them in the mouth. No, that shouldn't be the first thing that they think of. But when you're teaching a child, when you're spanking them at a young age, that is actually what you're teaching them. So you have to discipline twice. And again, people are like, well, that's double jeopardy. No, it's reasoning. You have to have a child. First, you have to discipline a child and have them and redirect them wherever you need them to be. But then you have to help a child think and reason. You have to help them to understand this is what happened, this is why it happened, and this is how we can avoid it the next time this comes around. And then I'll ask them, so what are you going to do different? And then they might try to just do what I did. Well, I'm going to watch you. Okay. So the next time you're going to do this and this different. Yes, ma'am. Okay. I'm watching. And the next time I'm going to watch them. I'm going to see what they're doing. I'm going to see if because sometimes you can catch a kid, they'll almost do it, and then they'll think, oh, okay, I got it. And it makes you proud because you know that you've taught them. You know that you got through to them. And it's so super important that, that we do that as a child, and that we do that at a very young age, because being a good teacher takes passion, patience, and repetition. You have to have a passion to be a good teacher. You have to have the patience to deal with people's children that are not yours. And you have to have repetition, which is consistency. Consistency and repetition are not quite the same. Consistency is kind of the same actions, doing the same thing. Repetition is more like, it's kind of the same thing, but it's slightly different. But you wanna be able to do that. You wanna be able to be a good teacher, because parents are the primary teachers. And I tell a teacher that in a heartbeat. When I take my kids to school, I'm gonna tell you right now, don't get it twisted, Miss So-and-so, because me and my husband are my children's primary teachers, because I don't too much care for the school system anyways. But I'll tell them, me and my husband are our children's primary teachers. Okay, so whatever you're teaching my children, when they come home, I'm going to make sure that they learn it right. Because if they learn something at school that I don't like, and I have to come, and they come home, I'm going to have to reteach them, to do it the proper way, because they don't learn some garbage at school. And teachers sometimes, teachers, say something to me, and I'm going to tell you one thing my job is as a parent, is to make sure you're doing your job. And they look at me crazy when I say that, and I'm just like, look, my job as a parent is to make sure you're doing your job as an educational academic teacher. Because really, I should homeschool. I homeschool my oldest son. The other two are now going to start being homeschooled too, but my oldest son was started to be homeschooled for that very reason, because the teachers at the school that I pulled him out of didn't quite understand when I say I am the primary teacher and I'm going to make sure you're doing your job. I'm going to make sure you're doing your job as a teacher, because that's my job as a parent. Me and my husband are here to protect our children from whoever and whatever. And I may not be qualified to academically teach my children the little silly stuff that has to be taught, because I'm old school. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. I'm old school. I may not be able to be qualified enough for the school system to teach my child, but I'm sure enough going to make sure you're doing it right. I'm sure enough going to make sure that if my son is not doing something, I want to know why. And if it has anything to do with the teacher, I want to know why she's not doing it. I always hold people accountable for their own actions. That's just something I teach across the board. So if the teacher's wrong, me and the teacher going to talk. If my son is wrong, me and my son going to talk. I always hold people accountable for their own actions, which actually goes back to the whole sparing the rod, spoil the child. A lot of people say, well, if I don't hit my children, because the rod is a symbolic rod, then I'm going to spoil my kids, so I have to physically spank my children. But that's not true, because the rod is a symbolic way to say accountability. So you'll have spare the rod, if you spare accountability, you're going to diminish your child's value. And that's true. If you just replace those wording the way I just did, spare the rod, spoil the child. Spare accountability, diminish value. That is literally the translation to spare the rod, spoil the child. You have to hold your child accountable. You're accountable for your own actions. If you did it, you did it. Now do something about it. When I teach in school, that there's 5 things that'll make somebody think you're being disrespectful, and that's a whole other video. I can actually make a whole video on that, because I think that's really beneficial. But there's 5 things that'll make somebody think you're being disrespectful, and they are your facial expression, your body language, your tone of voice, the language you use, and your attitude, as a whole. And I will watch that. Sparing the rod, if you spare accountability, if you spare someone, if someone's doing something and you don't hold them accountable for it as your child, even if it's just a child, if a little kid, if he knocks something over, you tell him, stop running in the house. And they run in the house and they knock something over, I'm going to hold you accountable, because had you not been doing this, this wouldn't have happened. And had you listened to what I said and not did this, then this wouldn't have happened. So when it all boils down, this wouldn't happen if you would have did what I asked you to do. Period. And that goes back to disciplining from the beginning and setting expectations. So yes, discipline is extremely important in a child's life. Consistency is so important in a child's life. Breaking down to whether you're going to spank a child or just verbally talk to a child, or very well just mentally discipline them by taking things that they're attached to. Because that is a form of discipline. You have verbal discipline, which is, you're having a conversation, thinking, reasoning. Then you have the physical discipline that comes with, actually spanking your child. And then, of course, you have the mental one, which is you're playing with their mental status. You're taking things that they're so attached to they can't live without. Their games, phones. When I was a kid, like I said, I was raised in the governments and the state system. They would strip our rooms. And I mean strip it down to a bed and some clothes and a desk, and that was it. So that's mental discipline. And it's actually very effective. Very effective. And it's actually something you should probably implement. You have verbal, mental, then physical. But you always want physical to be the last one because, yes, corporal punishment or physical discipline does have an effect on your child in the later years if you do not redirect that behavior. Because even as adults, we do things, but sometimes we have to do things to do things. So sometimes we have to say this to get this done, and then we have to clean up the mess over here. And it's the same thing. You're teaching a child that they're going to get spanked. And all in all, you want to teach them why did it resort to that? Why did it have to get that far? And so then you teach a child that there are levels. Just like there's levels to respect, there's levels to discipline. And if you don't use those levels of discipline, you don't use consistency, you don't set expectations, you don't set boundaries and limitations, and you don't stick to those, you're going to see a huge change in your child's attitude. They are going to be, if you don't do it, they're going to be disrespectful. They're not going to listen to nothing you say because your word has no meaning. It holds no weight. It means nothing. Stop doing that. Okay. No, you can't have ice cream. Let's go get some ice cream. Okay. Mom, can I walk across the street and get a Sherby? No, baby, not right now. Come on, we're going to go. Your word holds no weight because they know she ain't going to care. But if you hold them accountable, and if you come to them with a certain kind of way, or you come at them like, I said what I said, I meant what I said, and if you do this, this is going to happen, and then they do it anyways. What was going to happen needs to happen. If you play that game, it's 10 o'clock, go to bed, and they don't go to bed, I'm taking your game. If you don't take the game, your mouth, this powerful tool, it holds no weight. It's nothing. It's just words. Again, they're going to be hearing you, but they're not going to listen because your mouth is moving, but there's nothing coming out of it. And that's literally how kids function. That's how they act. You'll notice that they're going to get worse as they get older, but if you train them before their age of 7, that what you say is what you mean, you're going to see that when you talk, when they're pushing your boundaries, when you talk, they're going to watch you. And then when you hold firm to what you said, they're going to remember the boundary. And maybe in a little couple years after they get maybe 13, 14, they're going to try again. Well, Mama, now I'm older. And my kids don't have phones. Never one of them. We have 3 boys. I have one that's going to be 15, and I have a 12 and 11-year-old. They're going to be 13 and 12. And my kids do not have cell phones. And they'll say, Mom, why can't we have a cell phone? And then they'll be like, Dad, why can't we have a cell phone? They know why. Because cell phones are a form of responsibility. You need to show me that you can actually have a phone without attaching yourself to it all day long. If you can prove to me that the importance and the value of having a cell phone, then maybe we'll talk. But until then, you have to earn the privileges in our household. And some people might be like, well, dang, you holding it down like Fort Knox. Not really. I mean, we have a really fun household. It's just we have boundaries. We set limitations. What we say is what we mean. And if it doesn't roll like that, there's consequences. There's consequences. and they know it, and they're either going to do what we tell them to do, or they're going to have to deal with the consequences that are going to come up. And normally, once kids understand your expectations that you have and the boundaries that you're setting, they're not going to really try to cross them anymore, because now they understand they're, all right, Mom. And they might get attitude. Like, one thing I cannot stand in my house is for you to slam a door. I cannot stand you to slam a door, because it's like, you ain't just yell at me, but you just did by slamming a door. So you're not going to do that. You're not going to do, because that's tone. That's that tone thing. That's disrespectful. Disrespect is the consideration of somebody's feelings. When you consider how someone is going to feel about something and you respect them, you don't want to hurt their feelings, you want to disappoint them, then you're going to do what you're supposed to be doing, or you're going to watch what you do around them because you respect them. And that's a whole other video. I could do this all day long about these kinds of topics. So with that being said, I have answered all 4 questions. We went over, why is discipline important in a child's life? Why is consistency important? What is the most effective form of discipline? And will corporal punishment have a negative effect on a child later in life? If you had any comments, if you had any situations or any experiences yourself, any questions about children, if you have a situation yourself and you want advice about it, put it in the comments. I'll be happy to kind of talk to you about it. No, I'm not an expert. I'm not even going to sit here and act like I'm an expert. I'm a psychologist or this counselor this. No, but I'm a mom, and I know it works. I have big kids, and I've been doing this for a really long time. I'm a substitute teacher, so I deal with other people's children. I'm a mentor, so I deal with a lot of kids that have a lot of emotional and mental issues. So I have a lot of experience. But like I said, no, I'm not a professional, and I'm not fixing to tell you I'm a professional. So if you want professional help, you're going to have to seek this somewhere else. But if you do want, my point of view or my advice on what might work, please feel free to leave a comment, and I can get back with you. Like this video if you like the content. And please share it with your friends or other people that you know are parents and could really benefit from the video, because this information is very critical. A lot of people don't get to hear this kind of information. They don't get to hear the truth. They don't get to hear, it's either somebody coming down on them, or somebody just like, oh, you're doing such a good job. Kid cusses them out. People just don't get to hear information like this. So if you enjoyed it, share it with your friends, share it with your family members, share it with other parents. Share it on your Facebook page or Twitter, Instagram, somewhere where you think that somebody might be able to benefit, because that is the sole purpose of these videos. Also, we now have, if you want to donate to our channel, we have a Cash App. It's $EC question reflection. Again, that is $EC question reflection. And also, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to hit that bell so that you don't miss any of our other material. This Friday, we're going to be going live. The question that we are going to be covering on that topic is going to be, you ready? Should you apologize to your child? I'll say it again. Should you apologize to your child? And that's going to be live. So that's going to be Friday. I'll set it. Actually, you know what? I'm going to make that Saturday, because I'm going to do a different live on. I'm going to be on a different live on Friday. So let's do Saturday. It's going to be Saturday at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. That's Saturday at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And again, that topic is going to be, should you apologize to your child? So that's it for today, guys. So you guys have a great rest of your day, and thank you for joining.